Number 3, please.
Reopening a meeting to electors or taxpayers who wish to be heard on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors.
Yes, I believe Mr. McNamara. Good evening, Mr. McNamara.
Good evening. We need a green button here.
Yes. All set.
Hey, Colin, McNamara, 47 Grandview Street.
Good
A
evening.
grab bag tonight, so let's jump in. I just want to say congrats to those kids in the Youth Commission and taking their oath of office to the Constitution. They're just words, though. They don't mean much because politicians take that oath all the time and they're not held accountable for anything they do. George Bush, the Jr., he just called it a piece of paper, the Constitution. And I'm not sure Joe Biden even knows what it is. He's ruling on student loan forgiveness and stuff, unconstitutional stuff all the time. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about energies for a second. And recently, the state had an informal hearing out of session, a special session held by the CT Dems. And Mr. M.D. Rahman, our senator, sent out a email saying that Democrats are actively planning for a brighter future for our children and are combating climate change, wildfires, and wet summers by limiting your access to natural resources and instituting some of the strictest tailpipe emissions in the country. And they want to ban the sale of gas-powered vehicles by 2035, according to our leadership, Governor Lamont. And instead institute a bunch of EVs, therefore transferring pollution from America to third world countries where we don't have to look at it. It's not in our backyard, so we don't have to care. We can have slaves mining cobalt in Africa and destroying Peru for lithium, but it doesn't matter because it's not around here, which is charming. It reminds me of their push to ban gas stoves because of the dangerous emissions they emit, even though they burn up 99.9% of all the fuel they release. But there's no talk about banning anything like this. This is a Glade air freshener. You put it in like a little device and it sprays every half an hour. Let's look at the ingredients. Acetone, number 1 ingredient. Isobutane, butane is flammable. Propane, and fragrances. It says fragrances contain allergens. Right there. There's no one talking about banning anything like this or any of the disgusting poisons they put in processed foods or neurotoxins they put in our public water supply. But they're going to take away your ability to have certain access to resources that would make you autonomous because they want you on the grid at all times where they can monitor and control your usage and eventually shut you off, which is going to be charming. We could all cook on fires. It's back to school time. Oh, no, I'm going to go to the mayoral race. Congratulations, Mayor Rand. It looks like you're a shoo-in. Because we don't have anyone to compete against you. The Republicans and Mr. Tweedy say that because of vicious personal attacks, there's no one that's got the stomach to run against you. And Mr. Pohl, who's a Democratic chair in town, counters with that that's preposterous and they're the party of inclusion and diversity and loving one another. But just a few years ago, a very respected businesswoman, Danita Sulik, ran for office. And she had a campaign flyer that said, keep Manchester in the right hands. And she employs a variety of people from all race, colors, and creeds and sexual orientations. But somebody decided to alter the flyer and post it all over Facebook saying, let's keep Manchester in the white hands. And I venture to guess that wasn't a Republican doing that. I also came to a legislative hearing in this room when a group of protesters were outside shouting with a bullhorn. Me and Mr. Gene DeJoannis went outside and asked them to either come inside and make a public comment on the record or to quiet down because nobody could hear what's going on. That was my association with those people. I have no association with those people. I come later to find out Mr. Mike Pohl took the liberty of calling several people to tell them that I was bullhorning and calling Jason Rojas a child abuser or molester even. He called several elected officials in town. I know you want to cut me off, but I actually have the First Amendment right to say this.
Because I don't want this to be
it's fine. You're infringing on my
paper, but let's not get into.
Yeah, you're infringing on my rights. New York Times, we're relevant. I can talk about these people all I want. Thanks a lot. It's a Supreme Court case, so pipe down.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So Mike Pohl can viciously slander members of the public with no repercussions. And I actually approached Mike Pohl after I called him on voicemail and emailed him without response. You were there in person at the Hispanic Heritage Festival. I asked him why he had done it and not responded to me, not talked to me in person. We could straighten it out. He did not ever deny making those accusations. Nor you're in violation of rights. So
I'm going to give you one more chance. He's not on the agenda. Please focus.
He's an elected member of the Democratic Party in town.
He's not on the agenda.
That's
Thank you.
good. Doesn't need to be. It's public comment. I can talk about anything I want.
No,
Thank
you're-
you.
the public comment
So
is not
back to
allowed. You
school. We'll
bash
go back
people.
to school now. So it's the first day of school. Kindergartens can learn about transgenderism, and second graders can learn about self-pleasure, which is wonderful. Thank you. Well, I sent an email. I got 15 seconds to Mrs. Kearney, Mr. Parker, and Mr. Fenner, asking them if they know the relationship between BLM founders and Marxism, and them saying they're avowed Marxists. They said that was preposterous. I sent them the video that they have saying it on camera. I haven't heard a response in almost 3 weeks, and I'm looking forward to it. Enjoy
Thank
back to
you,
school.
Mr.
Watch out for
McNamara.
BS 24/7, the
Thank
new
you.
COVID variant. Take care.
Are there any other taxpayer members that can come forward? 1 through 10. Mr. McNamara, welcome back.
Colin McNamara, 47 Grandview Street. Item 6, 36 and grand and change for emergency preparedness for public health, funded through CDC and Department of Public Health, Connecticut. And then item 9, $139,000 from CDC and Department of Public Health to enhance local health efforts to support immunization efforts and media campaigns for vaccination. So you guys are accepting almost $220,000 worth of money to run propaganda campaigns to convince people to get vaccines that are not safe nor effective regarding COVID. I know so many people that got banged up from the COVID vaccines, and the tune just keeps playing. No one reassesses or changes course here. We just pour more money into it. I remember when COVID was happening and they had a mass testing campaign where I'm sure some of these funds went. I contacted Health Director Catlin and asked him if he could elaborate on the PCR cycle threshold, because Dr. Anthony Fauci's on film saying anything over 32 cycles gives you a sample that's replicant compromised, which means once you spin the cycles too many times, exponential growth of the sample, and gives you false positives. Now, Mr. Catlin was unable to provide me an answer for the number of cycles that the tests were spun at. The company that was doing it was SEMA 4, which the governor's wife conveniently invested in and got a no-bid contract to handle Connecticut's entire testing, which was great. It comes out later the tests were cycled between 35 and 40 spins, which means almost all those positives are false positives. But it was necessary to convince people that we were all going to die from a glorified cold. And the deaths globally and locally don't really reflect this overzealous campaign to shut down everything and destroy small businesses while they give us all a couple grand to sit back and line their pockets and their friends' pockets in corporate America. These vaccines have no liability. You can't sue the manufacturer. They enjoyed emergency use authorization, which means they didn't have to disclose any information. I brought the forms to you. I brought you guys this vaccine safety insert. It was completely blank. The biggest scam going, second only to climate change. This is great. I'm like a foil for Tom. It's item number 10. Let's switch to Climate Resiliency Fund, $700,000. This should be called the Neglecting Infrastructure Fund. The country has a D- in infrastructure on a global rating basis because we've been spending our money inappropriately when it comes to infrastructure through the use of large union contracts, which you guys approved for the schools, and not allowing fair bid processes for local people. We're only doing 3 minutes, not 5. There's only two
No, we
people
only
here.
get 3. We never get 5.
That's a bummer.
Good. Thank you.
See
We
you
always
next
get 3. Thank you. Okay. Any members of the public want to talk about item 8B, 1 and 2? Welcome back, Mr. McNamara. 3 minutes.
Colin McNamara, 47 Grandview Street. Item B1, ARPA Priority School Districts and Faith Acts Grant. $427,000 to be funded by the State of Connecticut Department of Public Education to support urgent COVID-19 response efforts. What is urgent about COVID-19 right now, especially among juvenile populations, that would warrant a $427,000 grant? I mean, I remember when COVID first happened and our governor fearlessly came out and told everybody that Connecticut was the home to the first juvenile death of COVID. But then about 6 weeks later, it turned out the baby didn't die of COVID. Her caretaker, babysitter, rolled on top of her and suffocated her. This is what I'm talking about. This is political nonsense being used to drive fear. $427,000 for urgent response to COVID in schools. I don't know. Unless you guys got something planned, like we're going to start bringing back masks and social distancing to kids, and you have to buy a plexiglass enclosure for every desk. I don't understand how you're going to spend $427,000, but there's plenty of money to go around. You're not working for it. You're making it for free. Item B2, low-performing school grants. $290,000 to be funded by the state of Connecticut Department of Education to improve and expand educational security and storage capabilities at Manchester High School. I spoke about this at the Board of Ed meeting when Mr. Geary had his contract extended, that this is a great example of failing upward. The worse you do, the more money you get. And I know $290,000 is a drop in the bucket when you come to a school budget of like $120 million. But I'd expect more low-performing school grants to come our way based on past performance. One of the members of the Board of Ed said that you don't replace your captain when you encounter a storm, and that he was sticking by Superintendent Geary. But then you got to ask a follow-up question: what happens if the captain's the one that drove your ship into the rocks? But I'm sure Manchester will hopefully get above the worst, I think we're the worst, or the seventh worst district in the state, which is quite a feather in our cap. Thanks for having me this month. See you next time.
Thank you. I thought we were referring to some Jimmy Buffett music there for a second.